Yeah, guys, there we go. Good morning again. I hope everybody is doing well. I hope everybody had a good weekend, and I wish for all of you a very good week. Okay. Well, we're starting today with our second class, our second content, which is outsourcing. Okay. I will open here our course schedule. Just I have this. I have this. I'm used to do this every time I start one class to visit the course schedule to show where we are and how we're gonna move ahead, just to make everybody to be in the same page, as we have just one meeting per week. Okay, so let me project display here my screen for you. Probably you are seeing my e-class now. And doing this, I make you guys more familiar with the divisions and the content of our e-class. So in the schedule and syllabus tab, we can open here the file syllabus, and we can check it out that we are just here in the second class. Sorry, in the third class. In the third class, we had our first class presentation of the course. Last week we discussed. Sorry, if anyone have any question, just shout. No problem. Nope. Yep. Okay, I have one question here in the chat. I will answer you in a minute. And today we are starting our third class, our third meeting, and we're going to discuss outsourcing. Okay, I left a material for you guys on this topic to be read, and today we're gonna explore a little bit more in depth this subject. Okay. Taking advantage of the message of a colleague that just sent me a message here saying that he joined the class recently and he doesn't have a group. I will add you in a group. Okay, as soon as I finish this class, I make this addition and inform via e-class, via message through e-class. Okay. By the way, we had two other colleagues that joined the class after we started, and I've already added them in the groups. So if you go to the presentation of the course file here, you're gonna see that the groups are updated with these two colleagues. Okay, one of the colleagues, William, was slotted in group 4, which we'll discuss case number 4, and the colleague, if I'm not wrong, Maria Fernandes was added to group 1. Okay, and then I will add Artur, which is the third colleague that just joined the class, just joined the course, to group 2 or group 3, probably group 3, which has fewer students. Okay. All right. Let's get started then. If we go to content, today we're going to discuss outsourcing, which is here in this tab. Okay, I'm going to use this material to support the discussions. Last class, we've had the opportunity to make, I would say, some superficial comments on on outsourcing, and today we're gonna go much deeper on this important topic of procurement, right? Outsourcing, the decision of outsourcing is a just a minute. I have more messages here in the chat. I don't think I'm in a group. Matheus Guedes. Uh, well, Matheus, Bruna. Okay, Matheus and Bruna, I'll check it out. I'll check it out. What happened? Maybe your names. I don't know exactly if your names were in the beginning, since the beginning, in the among the students enrolled in this course. But no problem. I will add you, Bruna, Matheus, and Arthur. Okay, I will add the three of you as soon as I finish uh, this class. No problem. Well, let's go. We, if you guys have any comment on the course, on the functioning of the course, groups, cases, etc., you just send a message or just ask using the voice. Okay, no problem. The way you like, we're here to answer. Uh, as I was saying, outsourcing is a very important, maybe one of the most important topics in procurement, within supply chain management, right? Juliana, please go ahead.
Daniel, I have a silly question about the essay for today. It's individual, right? Not in group.
No, yeah, it's individual, not in group.
Okay, thank you.
Not silly at all. Not
Thank
silly
you.
at all. No problem. No problem. Uh, any other question, guys, on the essay, any other uh, subject related to the course? No. I have one more question here, I guess, in the group, in the chat. Is there any possibility, one colleague, is there any possibility to deliver the essay that was for today by the end of the day, with even with great discount? Uh, well, I'm not used to do this. I will. Uh, I don't think so. I don't think so. What I can do, and then I guess this is a way to have a uniform, let's say, a uniform concession for everybody is at the end of the course. At the end of the course, in the last class, during the course, I will inform you exactly the date. But at the end of the course, I will open a Dropbox for you again, guys. If you left any SD behind, I will open the opportunity for you to deliver this SC, okay, with a discount uh, uh, on the grade, okay, but not for now, okay. Otherwise, we're gonna be a little bit messy on the course. At the end of the course, I will open just one Dropbox for you, and everybody that nice, everybody that left behind in your SC can deliver with a great discount. Okay, I have to take note of this, otherwise I will forget. I will forget. Hold on just a minute, otherwise I can forget that. Several tasks. All right, sorry for the delay. Notes are taken, and let's get started now. As I was saying, outsourcing, guys, is one important topic in the operations management, in supply chain management, and in procurement. Remark that I'm numbering these fields in order of capacity, or in order of width, if I can say that. Explaining in other words, operations embraces supply chain management, which embraces outsourcing. Okay, which embraces procurement, which embraces outsourcing. So we have this sequence of pertaining relations, if I may say like that. Okay, so outsourcing is an important topic of procurement, of supply chain management, and of operations. Why? Outsourcing is a strategy. When a firm, when a company, when an institution decides to outsource, it is making an important decision. Which decision is that? Is a decision related to resources allocation, to allocation of resources. I am letting the market, letting someone that makes a specific activity better than me to do this activity for me, and on the other hand, I concentrate, I focus my efforts, I focus my resources on the activities that I am good at, and the activities that I have the biggest strength. This is why we outsource, and outsourcing is becoming more and more common in the several industries that we have in the economy. Okay, it's generally speaking. Okay, generally speaking, the procedure of making of vertical integration, the decision related to a company that decides to buy the suppliers in order to make instead of buying or instead of outsourcing, is getting somehow not common in relation to the outsourcing strategy. Outsourcing is becoming more and more common. Okay, and it is on these that we're gonna spend our time in this class. Basically, we're gonna discuss 4 major topics on outsourcing. We're gonna talk a little bit about definitions. We're gonna make some discussion on make or buy decision, which is basically the decision related to outsource or not. We're gonna discuss the reasons why someone, a firm, an institution decides to outsource. And lastly, we're gonna speak a bit about supplier-buyer relationship. Supplier-buyer relationship. Okay, we're gonna bring within this discussion or these discussions some real examples. Okay, coming since from industry to the financial market. We have outsourcing in banking, for example. We're gonna see very typical example happening here in Brazil now that probably you guys are very familiar with. Okay. All right. Oops. Well, regarding definition, as I prior mentioned, outsourcing is, we have several definitions of outsourcing. The concept that I like most is related to resource allocation. Is when we decide to concentrate our resources on our core activities, on the activities that really add value to my business. Okay. Uh, uh, Resources in business, resources in general, actually resources in our lives, but the availability of resources in business is a challenge for everybody. It's a challenge for everybody. It's a challenge for a firm. A firm, a company, the decision makers, they need to decide on a daily basis where to concentrate their efforts to meet the several several needs, the several demands that a firm has. When we spend time with something that is not the core, mostly when we have availability of this product or of this service in the market, eventually we are leaving behind, we are leaving on the table value that could be sold to the customer, and that could be converted in revenues to the firm and better profits to the firm. So the decision of outsourcing is related mostly, but not uniquely, mostly on resource allocation, which takes us to cost and profit decision. Okay, cost and profit decision. But this is not only the only aspect of outsourcing strategy decision to be considered. We need to consider other important aspects related to outsourcing. If on one hand, outsourcing may give me performance, competitiveness in terms of cost, quality, eventually, on the other hand, I need to make sure that the supplier is reliable. I have to make sure that supplier is reliable. Okay. And reliability is linked, is connected to several aspects that goes since the relation between supplier and buyer, how they deal with each other, how connected, how close they are, to the features, the characteristics of the products that or the services that are being outsourced. Let's put some examples here. I mentioned to you guys in the last class, in a superficial manner, but I mentioned to you that when we have standardized products, standardized services, when we have commodities, when we are dealing with products which are commodities, which have standard features, standard characteristics, and when we have abundance, when we have a high level of offers and high level of suppliers offering these products, we may rely on outsourcing, because the product is available there. I just need to, when I need to, go to the spot market and buy it. It happens with several activities that come to my mind now. For example, fuel, gasoline, diesel, ethanol, etc. A fuel distributor like Ipiranga, like Raízen, like Petrobras today, BR, distribuidora, all of them are standalone. They don't produce fuel. One may say Raízen produces because they have sugar mills, so they produce ethanol. Yeah, they have this specific integration in the ethanol chain. But for the other products that they distribute, like diesel, gasoline, etc., they don't have. And Raízen is integrated because Raízen is the result of a prior joint venture, right? It's a joint venture between Cosan and Shell. So it's something that comes from the history of Raízen Foundation. Okay, but generally speaking, the biggest stake of the volume that Raízen manages in Brazil comes from outsourcing. They buy diesel from the refineries, they buy gasoline from the refineries. And they buy also ethanol from millers that are not from them. Okay, Ipiranga is just a standalone. They buy everything that they need from the fuel producers. BR, which was part of Petrobras holding today, they are not anymore. They are working as a standalone firm. So for fuel, we have this example. We have abundance of diesel, gasoline, ethanol in the market. So why would a fuel distributor be owner of the asset to produce fuel? Doesn't make any sense. They can find these in the spot market. If a gasoline trader at Ipiranga needs gasoline to be delivered next week, just a matter to get the phone, call to some brokers, and find the offers. The market is happening now as the stock market, as the financial market in general is happening now. Okay. Other typical example, which probably group number 3 maybe, we'll discuss in the Apple's case. Apple outsourced all the product assembly to Foxconn. Apple doesn't have a asset or a team, a infrastructure responsible for manufacturing. I'll give you the word, Gabriel, just a minute, I'll pass the word for you. They don't have infrastructure and team to assemble and to manufacture the pieces. They buy the screen, they buy the cover, they buy everything that they need, send this to Foxconn in China. In Foxconn, the iPhones, the iPads, everything related to Apple are assembled and sold. Please, Gabriel, go ahead.
Didn't they buy parts from Samsung as well?
From sorry, from which one?
Samsung.
Yeah, exactly. They have this, despite they are competitors, right? They have this interaction in some pieces. Exactly. You're gonna, and they mentioned this in the case, the group that we present have. Yeah, exactly. They buy from Samsung as well. This is interesting because what's the core business of Apple? What's the core business of Apple? What's Apple's core business?
Development of software.
Exactly. Product development.
They outsource, I think, almost every part of their phones. They just develop the software. They take the screens from Samsung, for example.
Exactly. Apple's focus is on development, on product, software development. This is in-house, right? This is in-house in California. This is what they do. Of course, they don't leave to Foxconn the assembly with any monitoring. They monitor every single step in the process of product assembly, physically speaking. When I say that Apple's business is product development, I'm saying the same thing that I guess Pedro just mentioned, software. Apple's product is software, is technology, okay? But they take care of...
And the main...
Go ahead, Robert, please.
Professor, and the main activity of Samsung is to develop devices, right? Not software. So there's a difference there.
Exactly.
They are competitors, but not that closely, I would say.
Exactly. They are competitors in some product lines, right? When we get... Samsung has a much more broader portfolio, right? They have air conditioner, refrigerator, television, etc. Apple is much more focused in some narrow product lines. But this is an important case. Apple focusing on their core business, technology, software, right? Innovation. The industrial part of the process and the procurement, the procurement, they participate on procurement. In some parts, Apple's team make the procurement of the pieces that go to Foxconn, and in other parts, other type of pieces, Foxconn make the purchase directly. They have this blended strategy, but generally speaking, the focus that Apple has is on software development, and they are very successful on this. Important to mention, and we're going to discuss this in Apple's case, they don't have integration backwards. They don't have integration upstream the supply chain, as we discussed last class, the concept of upstream, downstream supply chain. They are not integrated upstream, but they are integrated downstream, right? They are integrated downstream. They have retail, very nice retail stores. They invested, they noticed that having nice, fancy retail stores spread over key regions all around the world in the main road cities would bring them value. And who had the opportunity? Probably everybody in this classroom had the opportunity to go to a Apple store, a real Apple store, not a third-party Apple store, a real Apple store. You feel how you are served by the sellers, right? They know everything about the product, the devices, the technology. They are well trained to sell all the technology, right? That is embarked in the product. So this is a very interesting strategy, because they don't. Apple's focus is on product development and retail. The process of producing the devices that they sell are outsourced with monitoring, but it is outsourced. Okay, it is outsourced. So we have several cases like that, and this Apple example brings us the main aspect of the two main aspects of actually of outsourcing. On one hand, to reduce costs, to gain performance and productivity. On the other hand, to be careful with reliability of the supplier. We need to have suppliers that are reliable. At the same time, you need to reduce costs or to gain profitability through outsourcing. So this is what outsourcing is about. Okay. In the food industry, going from technology to the food industry, all the soybeans and corn that goes to China, handled by the major global traders like Cargill, like Bunge, like ADM, like all of these trading monsters. Cargill doesn't produce soybean, despite they are the biggest soybean and corn traders in the world. What's Cargill's focus? Logistics assets in the origins, in the Americas where the crops are grown, and contacts in the main markets, mostly in China. People in the within the destination, within China, Chinese people generally, that deals with the industries, food industries that buy soybeans, corn, and other commodities from Cargill. And on the other hand, logistics assets in the origins, ports, warehouses, and also people to buy the beans from the producers in Brazil, in the United States, in Argentina, and whatever, in Americas. This is another typical example. Why Cargill doesn't have farms and produce soybean? Because this is not necessary. As it happens with fuel, as I said to you now, if you go to Juscelino, the crossing between Juscelino and Faria Lima at Raizen, we're going to have there all the traders dealing now, buying, selling fuel. If you go to Cargill at Morumbi shopping region, same thing. We're going to have several traders, all of them dealing now in buying and selling corn, soybeans, wheat, and other products. They are doing this now because this is available. They don't need to produce. They don't need to invest in farms. They don't need to stuck money in farm to produce those commodities. They just need to go to the market and shop it. Okay, so all of this has deep relation with the decision to make or buy, the decision to outsource or not. Okay. Here we have a chart that's explaining pretty much what we are discussing here now. The decision of buying is driven by, among other things, focus on core business, reduction of cost base, unloading the activity to experts, and thus gaining performance. Okay. We could have another box here saying to release capital, transform stuck capital in warehouses, in buildings, in infrastructure into cash, and releasing this money that is stuck in infrastructure to cash, using this cash to invest in core business. We're going to see this in some more details ahead in this class and ahead in the course when we discuss supply chain finance. Okay. Any comment, guys, on this first part of outsourcing strategy decisions? No?
No.
All right. So we need to bear in mind when we decide to make, when we have a decision of making or buying, we need to bear in mind some aspects that I've mentioned already, but I would like to put more systematization on this explanation. If we decide to make, what's the main concern that we need to have? We need to be concerned about the financial availability to make, right? If I decide to buy my suppliers, if I decide to go upstream my supply chain and integrate vertically my suppliers, if I decide to do in-house what my suppliers are doing currently, I need to have money. I need to spend, right? I need to buy them. Making things instead of buying often requires investment in assets, physical or HR. Okay. In banking, this is very common. Not only in banking, but let's use banking as an example, to illustrate why HR is an investment. We are seeing several digital banks, right, popping up. We have Nubank, we have Agibank to be more recent. We have Original, which is one of the pioneers. We have CCs, and we have several other banks that are popping up to compete with the bigger, the biggest banks in Brazil. What they are doing to get knowledge, they are hiring from these big banks people that are familiar with the banking activities in Brazil. They are paying a lot to these guys. Eventually, they are not paying a lot, but they are promising a lot, like stocks, like bonus, etc. But they are approaching people, executives from the big banks in order to capture them and bring them to work in their business. Okay, they are trying to make the banking products that are already being made by the big banks, but because they cannot outsource, right? They cannot outsource. They need to make in-house. This is mandatory in this case. If I am joining banking business in Brazil, if I am an investor and I have money, I want to open a new bank in Brazil, how could I outsource credit activity? I could, but this is eventually I could, but this is pretty core, right? I need to have the credit process, the credit assessment process in house, because at the end of the day, I'm giving to the borrowers money from the investors. I need to make sure that the credit adjudication is being done in a manner that I trust. This is pretty core. So eventually I need to go to the market to approach the credit directors, credit managers of the big banks to bring them to my firm in order to them to implement this process. This is just one example. Please, Juliana.
Daniel, given a step back before making or buying decisions, do we have specific KPIs that can help us to decide even to make or buy, something like that, or are financial KPIs only? I don't know if we have outsourcing KPIs specific.
We have Juliana, we have specific KPIs to specific relations. It depends on the environment in which we are deciding to outsource or not, if I may say like that. For example, if we are deciding to outsource or to make a industrial, if we are a industry, any industry, like car industry, we assemble cars like Toyota or GM or any other like that. If we get to a situation in which we need to decide to outsource or to make one specific step of my supply chain, I will consider financial aspects. For example, I will buy that supplier and I will make, for example, a simple project finance to check it out, the payback to check it out, all the other metrics related to project finance, and I will have financial KPIs to be decided. But this is not enough. In this case, this is not enough. I need to have additional KPIs. For example, if I decide to outsource instead of making, or to keep outsourcing instead of making, what's the risk of this supplier to start working to a new entry company, for example, a new Chinese company that decides to come to Brazil and to approach the supplier?
There's also the possibility of this supplier to simply disappear or go bankrupt, for example, and then the company, the client is left alone and has to find and develop another supplier, and it is a long process.
You're
We
right.
can't-
You're right, Roberto. Exactly. So, remark, Juliana, that in this case we have the financial assessment and the financial KPIs to be considered, but we have other non-financial or other operational aspects to be considered. I'll be a little bit deeper on this question that you made, Juliana, to put a concept for you here, guys. We have the concept in the transaction costs economy, which I mentioned to you in the class that we have, the last class that we have. Within the theory of economic costs, we have the concept of asset asset specificity, especificidade dos ativos, asset specificity. What is asset specificity? Asset specificity is something that Roberto is touching. Hey, if I decide to outsource, if at some moment in the future my supplier disappears for any reason, he decides to work with my competitor, he simply go bankrupted, what happens with me? In other words, is my supplier very key to my operation, core to my operation? If the answer is yes, he brings a high level of asset specificity. So you need to think very deeply, profoundly, if it is the case to outsource. Even if the project finance says that financially speaking, this is the best decision. Asset specificity. One example for you, I guess I mentioned this at some moment in our last two classes, but the Chinese trading firm named COFCO. I just mentioned to you that Cargill just buy and sell soybeans. They don't have farms, etc., etc. During the trade war between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping, during the period in which Trump was the United States president, all of you watched the trade war, right? What was the trade war? Trade war was a trade war in which the United States started to add taxation to products that was exported to China or that was imported from China to United States, and the other way around, China making the same thing. And the United States decided to tax soybean corn that was exported to China. Look, soybean corn is vital to China, right? It's the base of food for Chinese people, 1.6 billion people. What China noticed? China noticed that the food industry established in China could not depend on Cargill, on ADM, on Bunge, on the global traders, because all of them were American or European. What they've done the following. COFCO Food, which is a public Chinese food industry that was focused just only in food processing and retail. Chinese government asked these guys, this public firm, to integrate vertically. From the day to the night, COFCO bought two mid-sized global traders that had assets in Brazil, in Argentina, and in the United States. And from night to day, COFCO was buying from the source. They integrate vertically, buying assets located in the source of the food. Why did China do this? Because food is a asset. Food is for China an asset that has a high level of specificity. they cannot depend on traders or on the mood of the president of the United States to have food available. I don't know, Juliana, if I answered your question regarding these, which KPIs we need to consider. So it goes far from financial KPIs only. Financial KPIs are very important, but they are not unique. They are not unique at all.
Okay, thank you, Daniel.
No problem. I had people raising their hands here. I don't know. Let me check here if I noticed that two people raised the hand. If you guys had any question, please be free or comment. Nope. Well, so if we consider to make, as I was saying, we need to basically to consider to make sure that money is not a problem. Not only money, but balance sheet. We're going to discuss this better in the supply chain finance, but I mean, I may have money, my firm may have money, but if I decide to buy someone to make something that is being outsourced, I need to have more money, and I have to have punch to have capital stuck in my balance sheet as a non-current asset instead of a current asset. I need to be bankability, if I may say like that. I need to have bankability to support money flowing from cash to PP&E, or they say properties and infrastructure in the balance sheet. We're gonna go in detail on this further on the course. Okay. And if we decide to buy, we need to bear in mind, as I was mentioning, we need to bear in mind that trust is key. And the higher is the level of asset specificity, the higher is the level of the asset specificity, the higher needs to be the level of trust between buyer and supplier. So this is a spectrum, right? I'll give you the word, Gabriel, just a minute. This is a spectrum which I showed to you last class, but not just to make sure that this concept is well explained. When we decide to buy instead of making, we need to consider this spectrum here. This spectrum here, okay? Here is less asset specificity. Here is high asset specificity. If I decide to buy, I need to make sure that I am dealing with products or services that are located in this part of the spectrum here. I need to make sure that the product is low level of asset specificity featured. I need to make sure that I'm dealing with this. Doesn't make too much sense to buy products or services that are located in this part of the spectrum of asset specificity. And the more the product is standard, the less it is specific for an industry. The more the product is standard, easier I can go to the market, the spot market, and buy it. Or lower is my level of concern regarding if I may be without this product or not. Okay, Gabriel, please go ahead.
Yeah, so you're talking about trust before, right? And in the text, they talk a lot about two concepts, I think, when it comes to trust, with the supplier that entail kind of forming a partnership with the outsourcing company, meaning that on one hand, when you're drawing up, when you're managing the contract, you have to not only specify what outcomes you want, but tie them to your own firm's for performance. That I understood pretty well because it makes sense. But we also said that if you should form a partnership relationship with the outsourcer and share the risks. So I was wondering what exactly would share the risks entail? How do you share the risks with an outsourcer?
That's a good question. We would discuss this further in this class, but let's make this discussion in advance. This is a very important question. Okay, the question here is, when I outsource, I need to make sure that my agreement with the supplier, if I am the buyer, embraces several aspects. Among them, what Gabriel mentioned, the risk sharing. I mean, I need to have an agreement in which supplier and buyer are running together the profits and the advantages of the relationship, and also the risks of the relationship. How do we do this? This is not simple. This is not very simple. This is not very simple. Okay, I'll mention one example, Gabriel, from the financial market, from banking. From banking in Brazil, this is quite common when we are talking about wholesale banking. I mean, when we are talking about the relation between banks and clients and firms that are clients of these banks. Have you ever heard about vendor or comprador financing structure? Have you guys ever heard about this? A vendor covenant, vendor agreement between between firm and between firm and bank in Brazil? Yes, no. Portfolio finance?
No, not me.
No problem, no problem. Let me explain this. I guess this is the example that will explain better how we can share risk between two parties, between supplier and buyer. So what I'm saying is that we have this example here. We have in Brazil banks, one specific bank. Okay, let's not name the bank, but one bank, and we have one firm. Okay, bank in this case is the supplier. What the bank supplies? Cash. Firm is the buyer. Firm is the buyer. What firm buys? Cash. Okay, all right. Supplier and buyer, and here the product. They have several relationships. One structure which is very common, we're gonna again go deeper on these when we discuss supply chain finance, but just for a matter of example, I guess this is important to mention now. We have a very common operation in Brazil, which is, for example, we have vendor and comprador. Let's focus on vendor. What is vendor? Vendor is one financing structure in which the anchor firm, which is this one. What is the concept of anchor firm? Empresa âncora. Anchor firm is the main firm in a supply chain. For example, JBS. JBS is the anchor firm of the meat supply chain. The meat supply chain is formed by the farmer, by JBS, which is the processor, by the retail supermarkets like Carrefour and Astra, etc., and by the customer. What is the anchor firm, the major, the most important firm in the supply chain? In this case, JBS. It is the firm that manages, that have more power in the supply chain in order to manage cash flows, and product flows. So this is the concept of anchor firm. And several anchor firms in Brazil, several main firms in a supply chain in Brazil, they try to provide financing solution to customers. What they do basically, let's get this example of not this example of JBS, let's take as an example retail industry. Let's suppose that this firm here is Carrefour, okay? Carrefour. Oh, sorry. Oops. Let's suppose that this firm here, let me screen again this. Okay. Let's suppose that this firm here is Carrefour. What Carrefour does when they are handling fruit and vegetables products? Here we have our customer, right? Ourselves, the individuals that go to Carrefour to buy apples, oranges, vegetables in general, etc. Okay. Here we have Carrefour, and here, let's put here, we have the supplier of Carrefour, which is the supplier of fruits and vegetables products to Carrefour is one small farmer. What Carrefour does? Carrefour sells to this guy fruits and vegetables at cash or in credit card to receive in 30 days, but basically Carrefour sells at cash to customers, and they ask to these guys 30 to 60 days to pay for the product. So this guy here is smashed in his cash flow because he delivers the product today to Carrefour, but he receives from this sale to Carrefour 30 to 60 days after delivery, after the shipment. And this guy, sometimes he faces difficulties regarding cash flow. What Carrefour offers to this supplier here? He offers a bank financing to this supplier. If this guy goes directly to the bank to get working capital, what's going to happen? A small firm that produces fruits and vegetables, he knocks the bank's door. What's happened? Or he's not going to get any cash, or he's going to get very expensive cash, right? Because generally speaking, he is small and with not very good financial structure. What Carrefour does? Carrefour says to this bank, hey, please finance everybody from my fruit and vegetable supply chain. When this guy comes with an invoice saying that he shipped product from me, please make the payment in advance to this guy. Make the payment in cash to this guy. And in 30 or 60 days, instead of buying this guy here, I will buy you. So you make a receivables discount, desconto de recebíveis. Generally, and then getting to your question, Gabriel, generally this bank says, okay, perfect. I will make this cash advancement to your supplier, but I need you to run the risk. I need you to run the risk of this supplier. I need you to run the risk of this supplier. And then this risk sharing can be very variable, can be a partial risk sharing, for example, hey, let's split 50%, 50% risk sharing, or banks may say to Carrefour, hey, I need you to get 100% of the risk. This is this type of discussion is very open, mostly when the customer, bank customer, is a big firm. We're going to again discuss this in details in the supply chain finance. Gabriel, please go ahead.
Yeah, so it's kind of like when, let's say you're, I don't know, a potato chip company and you buy potatoes from independent farmers, and you could sign a contract saying, okay, every year's we'll pay you, I don't know, X amount of money, regardless of how much potatoes you have to sell us. Would that be an example of sharing the risk?
Exactly.
Okay.
It's another example, and this example is very common for several industries. Generally, Gabriel, of course, we may establish between supplier and buyer risk sharing related to operations or quality or whatever, but this is pretty much difficult to measure, right? Let's say an industry is establishing a partnership with a supplier, and this company is proposing to the supplier, hey, let's split the benefits and the costs related to quality. In other words, if you supplier, you provide me high level high quality product that I may use in my industrial process, and thus I sell the finished goods and I get higher revenue, I will pay you a bonus. And the other way around is true. If you provide me bad products, shit products that put my industrial process down, and then I offer to my customers low value products, reducing my revenues, I will apply you a penalty. It is possible, but could you agree with me that the measure of this is hard? Who gives me the guarantee that if I provide you a very good product and you get a higher value in selling this, how could you prove me that you're gonna share with me exactly the same proportion of value that you got selling the product with the input that I provide you in high quality? You know, how could you measure this? It's hard to measure. It's the same thing with bonus. When you go, probably you guys, all of you, well, most part of you, I mean, it's hard to say because I don't know everybody, all of you in detail, but I know that part of you will work in banks or in industry, or I mean, in the retail industry, whatever. All of these industries have the variable salary program, right? In banking, this is very famous. You go to the bank and you know that at the end of the year, you're gonna get bonus related to your performance. The major discussions on variable salary is how much I will get if, or better, what are the KPIs, how my performance will be assessed in order to me to be priced related to my variable salary. I don't know. I mean, eventually I have one friend here or there that is pretty happy with the variable salary policy, but generally speaking, nobody is pretty happy, because if you get a high bonus at the end of the year, in the beginning of the next year related to the prior year, eventually you're going to be sad because your colleague got more money than you, and you say, hey, but I worked more than him. I delivered more than him. Why I got just this? Even this is a high variable salary. And if you are getting a low variable salary because the performance of the firm is bad, etc., you may be unpleased. You may be sad because, I mean, why I got just this if I worked so hard, even if the company delivered had a bad year, a bad performance, etc. So the same thing as the relation between buyer and supplier that I just mentioned. It's hard. At the end of the day, it's hard to establish clear risk sharing, profit sharing relations. Except in this case, I exemplified for you. When we are talking about the relation between bank and firm, when a firm wants to finance its supply chain or its retail chain, its customers, you may establish with the bank a very clear risk sharing structure, very clear. Because the KPI is just one, is default. Okay. All right. What time is it? Okay. All right. Any other comments, guys? Suggestions, doubts? No. Here's some examples that I would like to point out related to the decision of buying or making. Okay, it's I mean, current examples that are happening or happened just recently in our market in Brazil. Let's start with this example that is displayed for you in your screen. Agentes autônomos and the rule of exclusivity. Probably some of you heard about the fight between XP and BTG. What happened? What's the essence? What's the origin of this conflict between XP and BTG? XP decided to outsource. What did XP outsource, guys? Couple of years ago. What did XP decided to outsource?
Traders.
Traders, not exactly. Close, but not exactly. They decided to outsource the bankers, the relationship managers. If you are Itaú's customer, you're gonna be served. If you are you individual, not firm. If you individual is Itaú's customer, you're gonna be served by a relationship manager, right? Which is Itaú's employee. If you are a firm, you're gonna be served the same thing by a banker. If you are a corporate level, you have this fancy name, banker, which is a relationship manager. And if you are a smaller company, a national company, you're gonna be also served by a relationship manager, a banker, which is Itaú's or Bradesco's or Banco do Brasil's employee. What XP decided to do? XP decided to outsource this. It said, hey, I will not have, or I will reduce the number of employees that are dedicated to the commercial relationship, which is an important activity, right? The bankers, the relationship managers are the ones that capture new clients and also that they are responsible to maintain those new clients. And XP decided to go against this concept very successfully in the very well successful in the beginning. What they've done, they decided to outsource this. They started to incentivize people that were former banking employees or people that were in banks but were not happy in their positions, and they started to motivate those guys to open their own companies, which had as focus to serve, to sell XP's products. XP started to give support to those guys. Hey guys, instead of being my employee or instead of being Bradesco's employee, etc., whatever, open your main representation firm and represent me. Sell my products. If you sell my products, you're gonna get a very good stake of the sales. But look, you won't have fixed income. You just get what you sell. From the night to the day, XP dismantled one important item of cost at their income statement, which is headcount with commercial team. From the night to the day, they vanished with this cost because the agentes autônomos just got money when they sold products. Very interesting and very dangerous because, I mean, selling products is a key activity. Yes, credit, right? Credit assessment is a key activity for banking, and capturing and maintaining new clients is also a key activity. It is also a key activity. BTG noticed the potential of this business model and started to approach XP agents. Trust. I was at the BTG at that time, 2.5 years ago. I was BTG's employee. And I mean, every single day, a new rep firm was presented in BTG as a new BTG agent. And when we watched the history, they were XP's previous rep. BTG said, hey, I will pay you more. How about becoming my agent? And then several firms decided to move from XP to BTG. And what they brought to BTG? Customers. The wallet. So this is a very important matter of trust. XP decided to outsource a kind of key activity. And I mean, some agents were not that reliable, or the relations between XP and the agents were not being well managed by XP. Result, several agents became BTG's agents, bringing to BTG several customers, several. Okay. Other example. We're gonna discuss in our supply chain finance class ahead in the course, but just to give you this example, all of you are hearing about fundos de investimento imobiliário. This is not just a matter for the ones that are interested in banking. This is a matter for all the people that are involved with business. These have a relation with business, not only with banking, with investments. What's the proposal, the value proposal of the real estate funds to the firms, to the companies that do business, to the industries, etc.? The proposal is the following. Hey guys, stop having assets. You don't need to stuck your money in assets. You don't need You don't need to bury your money in assets. Make your money free, release your money to be spent, to be used in your core activities: technology, product development, innovation, relationship with customer, and let me handle this for you. Let me handle the investment in assets for you. What's happening here? Volkswagen, for example, instead of having a warehouse like that, they simply rented the warehouse. They have the right to use the warehouse for a number of years without having these assets in its balance sheet. And this means liquidity. And this means also the maintenance of performance, operational performance, because I am not the owner of the asset, but I use the asset as I was the owner. Okay, I'll give you the word in a minute, Gabriel. Other example, I have this conversation always with my one friend of mine. This friend of mine, he is against having assets. He says, I want to have cash. But not even a house. You don't want to have a house in your name? No, I don't want. I prefer to rent. And his rationale is interesting, and specifically from a financial perspective, this is right. I mean, I will rent houses where I can live instead of having one property in my name. When I have a property in my name, I stuck my money and I don't have money to do other things. I lose liquidity. But in this specific case, this is a bit, I mean, this is not a matter of only, it's not just a financial decision, right? I mean, I want to have my house in my name to revamp the house the way I want, to have the things I want. I mean, to establish, to invest in the assets, to have my home in the way I want. You know, this is a different situation, but pretty similar to what I'm saying here in this case of the fundos de investimento imobiliário. Please, Gabriel, go ahead.
No, the question, but you answered it for me already. Thank you.
No problem, no problem. So this is another example, guys, when we decide to buy instead of making. In this case, buying is renting an asset instead of making, which would be having the asset. Again, we're gonna go deeper on this specific topic further on. Other example of making instead of buying. 2 years ago, I guess, we had the truckers strike. If you remember the truck strike, the greve dos caminhoneiros, which is being discussed again, and which is linked to this Petrobras current situation. 2 years ago, we had truckers making a national strike for 7 days. Brazil simply stopped. All of you probably remember that. Some firms noticed that transportation is key for them. Transportation is so key that could not outsource anymore. Before the trucker strike, several firms outsourced transportation because we have plenty of transportation services available. If you want to hire a freight, you go to the market and hire these at spot market. It was very available. After the truck strike, several firms lost money. Mostly the firms that were highly exporter driven, because the importer they didn't care about this problem. They said, hey, you should have forecasted this. And then some companies decided to stop outsourcing transportation and start to make transportation. They decide to integrate transportation service. They decide to buy trucks, to hire truckers, to hire drivers, and to have the service provided in-house. Examples: Grupo Amage in the agribusiness sector, they bought 300 trucks for grain export flow. And Cargill didn't buy, but they considered very seriously to buy trucks. So look, in the Cargill example, this is very interesting because they don't make the grain, they don't produce the grain, but they consider to produce or to make or to have in-house the transportation service. Okay, another example of decision of making instead of buying, right? Here, an example of hybrid strategy. If you notice that spectrum between making or buying that I explained to you, let me put this in a whiteboard here for a minute. If you remember, guys, the spectrum that I made for you in the last class, the spectrum between. If you have any question, guys, just shout, no problem. If you remember the spectrum between, between buy or outsource and make or verticalize, all of them are synonyms. When I say buying instead of making, I'm saying outsourcing instead of verticalizing, okay? They are synonyms. Between these two extremes, we have a wide range of mixed arrangements. We have a wide range of mixed arrangement, which is not classified neither as buy nor as make. This relation or this range of relations between making and buying are considered hybrid relationships. And again, you're gonna see each of the groups when you guys present the cases, you're gonna see that in all of the 4 cases, we have different styles of hybrid integration. Again, we have Apple dealing in a hybrid relation with some suppliers, but in a tight hybrid style. I mean, in a very close, they are not making what the supplier provides, but they are very, very close through a very strong supplying contract with the suppliers, involving, by the way, financing. So in order to tie the supplier, in order to make the supplier 100% tied to you, Apple finances the supplier. So the supplier is always in debt with the buyer. This is a way to not to make, you don't integrate vertically, but you tie so close your supplier that is pretty much as the supplier was part of you. And in this case, when you involve supplier financing, you are mitigating the risk of trust because you can punish the supplier in case they think about betraying you. Okay, and this is the case of JBS or BRF or the food industry in general that I will display for you here. If you notice this example here, guys, that are displayed in your screen, I put BRS here, but you could consider JBS as well, Tyson, and all the big food processors in the world. Those guys, what's the raw material? I'm sorry, for me it's a little bit hard to say that animals are raw material, but specifically in the business, from the business perspective, at the end of the day, the poultry and the animals are inputs that those guys use in the industrial process. Okay, again, I don't feel good to say like that, but just to make clear my explanation related to industrial process and inputs and products. Okay, I need to say that the poultry is raw material for BRF. These animals are converted in these products here, frozen products, frozen meat. This is very key for BRF. This is very key. This is the main raw material of BRF. The question is, BRF grows poultry. They have installations to grow in-house the poultry? No, they don't have. They don't have. What they do? They deal with several small farmers that are in charge of producing, of growing the poultry, and supply BRF with those animals. But hey, this is a very dangerous relationship because BRF needs poultry, and BRF have several heavy contracts, mostly with importer markets. How BRF manage the risk of having a lack of supply here in this relation between the industry and the farmers? They put money, as Apple does with some suppliers. They put money on the game. They provide credit to those guys. Working capital, those guys need working capital to buy the feed, to feed the animals, to buy any input that they need. BRF provide working capital, and BRF provide also investment capital to them. If they want to expand their installations, BRF provide this credit to them. In this way, those guys are always tied to BRF. Okay. And when I say BRF provides credit, Apple provides credit to the supplier, look, this is not a credit contract in the broader sense of the word. It's not a credit contract like the bank does with an individual or a firm. This money flows from BRF to the suppliers or from Apple to the suppliers in the format of advanced payments. BRF has a long-term contract with those suppliers. Apple has a long-term contract with the supplier. And what they do? They provide payment in advance to those suppliers. This is credit at the end of the day. And when you provide payment in advance to the suppliers have the commitment to pay for these advanced payments through products. Okay?
Professor?
Yep.
Does BRF works as an appraiser for the credits approval?
Yeah, they make the, you mean if they make all the appraisal, the assessment of the credit for approval or not, right?
I think that's the word, avalizador. I don't know.
Ah, okay. Yeah, can be appraisal. More common is guarantor of the operation. Yes, when we have, Lucas, here I put the banks because sometimes BRF is not willing to use their own cash to finance those guys. As typically what I explained on the relation between the farmers and Carrefour and the retail sector. Here is the same thing. Sometimes BRF says, hey, I will pay you, but I will not pay you cash. You deliver me the product, you deliver me the poultry, and I will pay you in 60 days or 90 days. In this case, BRF says to the supplier at the same time, hey, I will not leave you with no resources, no problem. If you need money and this guy needs money, you can go to the bank, say that you are my supplier. I have a covenant with this bank. You go to the bank, say that you are my supplier, show the invoices, and then the bank will make you the payment in advance. So BRF, in this case, is not using their balance sheet to support these advanced payments. They are making a covenant. With the bank and using the bank's balance sheet to provide this payment in advance to the customer. In this case, Lucas, you may have here between BRF and banks different type of risk sharing. You can have BRF as the guarantor of the operation. So in this case, the bank says, hey, BRF, if this guy doesn't pay me, if I don't receive the money that I provided to this guy, you, BRF, will be responsible for that. And this is automatic, okay? As BRF has a bank account in those banks, in the due date, if the money that the bank lent to the farmer is not paid to the bank goes to BRF bank account and just pick the money. It's automatic. This is a structure in which BRF and bank have an agreement in which BRF runs 100% of suppliers' risk. But you have several hybrid models in which BRF and bank share the risk in a risk-sharing structure. I will give details on the supply chain finance discussion, okay, on the types of risk sharing, etc.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. I don't know if I answered your question, but
yes, perfect.
No problem. Well, so here we saw some examples of buying, making, or hybrid relation. Okay, some examples. We have several other examples. Okay, here I mentioned just 3 for you guys to illustrate what we're talking about. And the question is, why outsource? And here, walking to the end of this class, we have several reasons why a firm decides to outsource. External supplier has better capacity to produce what's being produced in-house, freeing resources for other purposes. I mean, as I mentioned in the beginning of the class, when you decide to make, when you decide to verticalize, when you decide to integrate your your supplier, you need cash. You stuck cash. Your firm becomes less liquid. You lose liquidity. So when you outsource, you make money free. You increase liquidity of the firm. Other reason for outsourcing is a reduction of operating costs. Reduction of operating costs. When you outsource, when you don't outsource, when you produce in-house, you have people involved in this production that could be outsourced, for example. People, and we will discuss this better ahead in the course, but people is a cost line related to expenses. People, sales team, HR, accounting, all the people that is not involved directly in the production it's not a direct cost. It is considered expenses, headcount. And when you have many people working in one activity that could be outsourced, you increase your level of general expenses, and thus you reduce your operating costs. Sorry, you reduce your operating profit. You increase your operating costs and you reduce your operating profit. When you outsource, you don't need people to be involved in the production of this product, because this product is produced by someone else. So the cost involved in outsourcing in this case is just the cost of buying the product. Of course, this may be expensive, but it's not more expensive than if we consider all the costs that you would have producing the product, the good in-house. This cost that you have when you outsource is just a cost directly related to the production. It goes as, for example, raw material, and goes to the direct cost of production. Okay. Why outsource? Also, because we can, because it promotes the infusion of cash by selling assets. Again, you increase liquidity. And economies of scale. As soon as you outsource a bunch of activities, you can increase the bargaining power that you have against your supplier. When you are producing in-house, you don't have relationship with suppliers, so you don't have any type of bargaining relation. When you outsource, and when you outsource a bunch of activity or a high volume of your needs, you can bargain with your supplier. Hey, I will buy a high volume of product A, B, and C. I need a cost reduction per unit. Economies of scale. Okay. One important mistake that happens when you outsource is to forget that you are outsourcing. When you decide to outsource, instead of making in-house, you need to make sure that you're gonna effectively manage this relation with your supplier. Although you trust in your supplier, you need to monitor. You need to follow up. You can't simply leave the supplier to do what they want, because he can start doing well, but over time, as he noticed that doesn't exist any checking point, any monitoring, he can simply reduce the level of commitment. So the management of the supply network is very, very important. One way to manage, or one way to drive the relation between buyer and supplier, is using strong, well-written contracts. I'm not saying that a contract needs to be strong in terms of legal execution. I used to say in my professional activity, nobody wants to execute a contract. Nobody wants. I don't want to have my contract full of guarantees, thinking about execution, because execution is painful, is costing, is all the bad. I want to have strong contracts formed by clear and key elements to have bargaining power to negotiate with my supplier or with my buyer when we get in a point of disagreement. I need to prepare my contracts that will be signed by my supplier in order to have elements to call him to a negotiation table and discuss the terms of the contract, discuss the terms of the relationship, avoiding execution. Of course, last case, ultimately, you're gonna execute. And for this, you need to have a clear, well-written, strong contract. But I used to say the main aspect, the main importance of the contracts is to give you bargaining power in the relationship. And what are the key elements of a contract? Comprehensive service definition. You need to be very careful in defining all the service that, all the specifications that you are expecting from the supplier. You need to be very careful on this. Process for service evolution. Hey, we need to improve the services that you provide me or the products that you provide me over time. How we're gonna set up a service evolution schedule. What the benchmarks that we're gonna have over time to be reached in order to reach this increase in quality, increase in performance. As we discussed, shared risks and rewards, which is very hard to establish, except when we're talking about risk sharing of credit operations. Objectives to be delivered by both sides, which is pretty much related to service definition and service specification. So as a buyer, I expect performance. I expect performance of the product in terms of quality, in terms of functionality, etc. I expect supply pace. I need to have the process of supplying to be delivered in a standard pace, a number of trucks per day, a number of vessels per month, a number of containers per week. So I have to have this standardization in terms of programming. This is one example of objectives to be delivered by both sides. Okay, you have several others. Clauses related to force majeure, very, very, very important. What is force majeure? What are the events related, considered as force majeure? For example, a hurricane. If a hurricane hit the industrial facility of the supplier and the supplier shut down the production. If this is forecasted in the contract, Buyer cannot charge supplier for any losses that he could have related to the lack of supplying. So you need to establish what are the events that are configured as force majeure, and in this case, all these events, if happen, make both parties to be free of any penalty. During the pandemic, we had several problems related to clause of force majeure because, I mean, pandemic was not considered as force majeure. Force majeure generally are related to natural events like hurricane, like storms, like tsunamis, etc. Nobody imagined that we could be hit by a pandemic that could deeply affect the businesses. And then buyer and supplier in several industries, they needed to get together in a negotiation table and to discuss what to do. And lastly, key aspect of a contract is SLA, service level agreement. What are the service level agreements? What are the KPIs? We can name like that as well. What are the indicators of performance that will drive this contract related to quality, related to delivery speed, related to flexibility, related to cost? Just to give you a couple of examples. Here, guys, we do have some examples of SLAs. Okay, I will mention this in detail next week in the next class for you. And this last slide, which is an example of emergency arrangements as we are walking to the end of the class. Okay, let me make the check of the presence very quickly, and then you guys we are done for today. Just a minute. I promise I'll be very, very fast. My computer is